Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I trust you've all had a very happy Easter, and I'm pleased to confirm this is St. George's Day. My name is Richard Tice. I'm the chairman of the New Brexit Party, which is a great honour, and as you'll know, we've been quite busy over the last couple of weeks. And so we thought we'd just show you a clip of what we have been up to. As you can see, we haven't been hanging around, and there's lots more of this to come. Brexit is an incredible, huge opportunity for this great country. But we, the New Brexit Party, we are the only party that is promoting it as such, that knows how to embrace it with ambition, with optimism, with enthusiasm, with confidence, and with belief. That requires, of course, leadership, something that has been woefully lacking from the current Prime Minister and the Cabinet. We, on the other hand, we have that leader, and I'm very proud to introduce you now to Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you. Good morning, and of course, happy St. George's Day. Because we're part of the United Kingdom, but why shouldn't we be proud to be English as well? And this party will be proud to be English and to be British at the same time. We've made a good start. We got going Friday week back. We already have 67,000 registered supporters paying their £25 each. So we've got good numbers coming to us, and we've got the beginnings of a financial foundation that we're going to need for this great battle that lies ahead of us. We've done tremendously well with Conservative support, and much of that you've read about and seen. Lots of Tory councillors saying they're going to vote for us and they're going to down tools, go on strike, not go out and campaign for the Tory MEP candidates, which is perhaps hardly surprising, as people like Charles Tannock are standing for the Conservative Party in London, a man who said the Brexit result made him feel ashamed to be British as he went to apply for his Irish passport. So we're doing very well with Conservatives, and a number of Conservative MPs saying they will, of course, be voting for the Brexit Party. We've also done well with the UKIP vote, and that vote is now being squeezed down to a very small number, which I think it deserves to be, given the route and the choices, I'm afraid to say, that party has taken. But to read everything that's being talked about, you would think that Brexit, you would think that the idea of us being a self-governing nation was somehow a conservative centre-right philosophy, which of course it has never been. Traditionally, it was the Labour Party, back in the 1970s and through into the 80s, that believed we should not be part of what was then the European Economic Community. And I think one of the stories that perhaps has not been told is the extent to which the Labour Party too have broken their promises, been dishonest with their electorate, and frankly, betrayed people. They said they would honour the referendum result. Even people like Yvette Cooper, said they would honour the referendum result, but almost in slow motion, we've seen the party that stood again in 2017 promising to implement the result of the referendum, almost in slow motion, piece by piece, they've now virtually become a Remainer party. I mean, why else would you put Lord Adonis on your MEP list in the southwest of England? Now, Lord Adonis, I think, has been very helpful because he said, if you're a Brexiteer, don't vote Labour. And I want, as leader of the Brexit Party, to absolutely echo what Lord Adonis has said, and I intend to do that quite a lot over the course of the next few weeks. I will, as leader of the party, be spending most of my time in South Wales, in the Midlands, and in the north of England, in predominantly Labour areas. You see, 61% of Labour MPs represent Brexit constituencies. Of the 25 most marginal seats that the Labour Party holds, 20 of them are Leave constituencies. Of the 45 seats in England and Wales that Labour absolutely have to win to form a majority, 40 of them are Brexit constituencies. There are 5 million people out there that voted for Jeremy Corbyn, that voted for Brexit as well. And that's going to be our task. I think we'll go on squeezing the Conservative vote. I think we'll go on squeezing the UKIP vote down to virtually nothing. But I think the big target for this party is to say, look, Brexit is not about left or right, it's about right or wrong. Brexit is about us being a fully functioning democratic nation, a normal country. And we're going to go after that Labour vote in a very big way. What you will see from the candidates standing for this party is a big mixture of people from across the political spectrum, representing every walk of life and community in this country. This is a truly diverse group of people who feel so frustrated, upset at what the political class have done that they decided to put their names forward. We've got a very high calibre list of people, a list of very competent people, many of whom have achieved much in their own lives. And please don't think for one moment that the Brexit Party is here just to get a protest vote on the 23rd of May. Far from it. The 23rd of May for us is just the beginning. We have a two-party system, and those parties now serve nothing, frankly, but themselves. The system isn't working. Parliament doesn't represent the view of this country. And yes, we're being ambitious, more ambitious than I've ever been in the past. I did say a few years ago that I was going to do my best to cause an earthquake in British politics. And I think given the current aftershocks, I had some success with that agenda. But this is far more upbeat, far more optimistic, and far more ambitious. This is about changing politics for good, changing the shape of our political parties, changing the nature of Parliament, updating and modernising our institutions. And I think the appetite for change in this country is greater than it's ever been before. Now, I say these things to you just a few minutes before the launch of a new political party down in Bristol. Chucker and his chums, Change UK. But actually, they've got the wrong name. They should be Continuity UK, because they want to keep things pretty much as they are, and for us to stay in the European Union. And I'm fascinated to see that we have a whole list of Remain parties standing in these European elections, and now one dominant party standing up for Brexit. We intend to fight these elections. We intend and believe that we can win these elections and then take this on to be a movement that revolutionises and modernises British politics. Thank you.
Nigel referred to the quality of candidates that we've got for these European elections, and it has been absolutely incredible. Over 1,000 applications we've been through, the quality, the breadth, the experience, people who just wanted to say, enough is enough. I've got to stand, I've got to do something. And so we're announcing 5 candidates this morning, the first of whom describes herself as an activist for free speech. She's the author of a book called I Find That Offensive. She's a regular pundit on the BBC. Please welcome Claire Fox.
I've spent my whole life fighting for left-wing causes, so I can tell you no one is more surprised than me to be standing as a candidate for Nigel Farage's Brexit party. To be honest, Nigel and I are unlikely to agree on a range of issues: workers, women's rights, immigration, public services. But, and it's a crucial but, on the key question of implementing Brexit, no ifs, no buts, on the crucial issue of honouring democracy, Nigel and I agree wholeheartedly. This is a watershed moment for democracy, and for me that means democratic principles override left-right allegiances. Why? Because democracy matters. As Labour's Tony Benn once said, democracy is the most revolutionary thing in the world. Too bloody right. Without it, we are voiceless subjects. With it, we're citizens with the power to change our destinies. So I am standing in solidarity with the millions of citizens whose voices and votes have been traduced and trashed. When asked for our once-in-a-generation verdict on how we should be governed, we voters took our responsibility seriously. We voted in good faith and huge numbers. It was an exciting burst of democratic energy, contagious enough to enthuse those who'd never voted before. And that's why it's so tragic that many now conclude, I'll never vote again, after having their decision ignored so contemptuously. Listen, I understand their fury and frustration, but I'm standing because I'll be damned if I'm going to let the establishment get away with this vote vandalism. I want to encourage my fellow citizens to transform this seismic sellout into a constructive political opportunity. Brexit always did cut across traditional party lines. Now the great Brexit betrayal means that old party loyalties are dying. Even the strong identities of Remainer versus Leaver have moved on. There's a new realignment. So I'm standing for democracy versus those, there's now democracy versus those who are complacent about dangerous anti-democratic trends. So I'm also standing in solidarity with decent Remain voters who respected the rules and accepted the results and are as appalled by Parliament's undemocratic antics as the most ardent Brexiteer. So there are new political red lines, but sadly, too many of my left-wing peers are in denial about these political changes. Worse, they've turned their backs on a ballot box revolt against the establishment and the status quo when they should have been cheering. I'm particularly furious with those on the left who have traditionally been hostile to the EU, but who bottled it when it counted. Their feeble excuse that Brexit's a right-wing project, reactionary, hijacked by bigots. What a gross insult that is to the 5 million Labour Leave voters, or the third of ethnic minorities who voted Leave. So it's time for the left to stop abdicating responsibility. We should make our case for the radical essence of democracy. Yes, there's going to be blowback. I'm going to get a lot of stick, especially from those who irresponsibly throw around the vile smears that Brexiteers are, quote, worse than Nazis. No doubt the trolls will be out in force. Some of my liberal Remain mates, especially in the media, will shudder. But there's a lot at stake. And I take my lead from millions of Brexit voters who've shown incredible resilience in facing down 3 years of incessant defamation, abused as ignorant, xenophobic, racist fools. They have refused to be intimidated, so progressives must not be cowed but for fear of ugly name-calling. Don't get me wrong, I'm slightly nervous. And I also admit that since the referendum, I've felt at times a bit demoralised. But what's inspired me most, especially over recent months, has been watching myriad rank-and-file groups of leavers springing up around the country, organising stalls, meetups, marches, an energetic demonstration of the democratic spirit. I stand side by side with this people power and take courage from their determination to fight on. To conclude, I am a passionate supporter of liberty, equality and popular sovereignty. And now is the time to put everything on the line to vote for these key principles. I stand on the shoulders of democratic giants, from the levellers to the trade union movement, who fought for universal suffrage so that Parliament would be answerable to all people. This year is the 200th anniversary of the rally by Manchester workers who were massacred and maimed for daring to demand that mill workers should have an equal democratic voice to mill owners. Today, we don't face sabre-wielding cavalry charges, but whether you're left or right, we owe it to those 1819 Peterloo martyrs to protect our hard-won franchise from the new armies it faces. It's time to seize the democratic moment. Vote Brexit Party, our day will come.
Thank you, Claire. That was absolutely fantastic. Democracy is so key. It is the absolute bedrock to our country, and without it, we are nothing. For our second candidate, I'm delighted to welcome a former Royal Marine who served 3 tours of Afghanistan. He's one of the most decorated war heroes of the modern era, having been awarded the Conspicuous Gallantry Cross. He now works in conservation. Please welcome James Glancy.
Thank you very much, Richard. I feel like, given the outrageously hot weather, I should actually be talking about climate change. But the crisis that is facing our country right now has compelled me to stand. I love this country. It is one of the most tolerant, diverse, liberal democracies in the world. I think one of the greatest testaments to the British people and this country is the fact that so many people want to come here. They're willing to risk their lives crossing oceans and deserts. And the reason for that is because of our democracy, our freedom, our institutions. They are now under threat. The politicians at Westminster, the members of Parliament, the Lords, right now are undermining democracy. And our leadership is humiliating the British public on the international stage. Now, I served in Afghanistan. I was willing to risk my life fighting for our freedoms. Indeed, many of my friends and comrades did pay the ultimate sacrifice. I served in Sierra Leone, witnessing the elections there. I witnessed the Arab Spring, and I also, on the 3 tours of Afghanistan, witnessed the oppression in that country. I never once thought, having been in those parts of the world, I'd be standing here talking about the problems with democracy in this country. It's staggering. So I therefore have felt compelled to stand. If you want to change the political system, if you want to restore faith in democracy, then I believe you should vote for the Brexit Party. Thank you.
Thank you, James, for that, those amazing words. So for our third candidate this morning, ladies and gentlemen, is a former Chief Executive of the Mayor's Fund and also formerly Chief Executive of the Lord's Taverners, a very experienced worker in the charity sector. Please welcome Matthew Patten.
Well, good morning, everybody. I think there's probably a continuing theme running this morning, which is all of our surprise to be standing here in front of you. This is a really, really long way away from my day job, which is working in the charity sector in some of our most challenged communities, working with children and families who need a lot of support. When I thought about what I wanted to say this morning, I thought about 2 themes in terms of what I do on a day-to-day basis, which for me really resonate with why I'm standing here this morning and why I'm really proud to be standing for the Brexit Party. First theme is trust. Trust is absolutely implicit to what I do, what we do with young people and their families every day. Trust is absolutely implicit in terms of what's happening with this incredible situation that we find ourselves with Brexit. And trust is what has been broken in my mind in terms of a mile and a half away from here happening in Westminster. So I'm all about supporting, putting the trust back into our politics and closing the gap between government and the people. The second thing I'm really interested in is confidence. I think we need to have confidence in the people of this amazing country that we live in. I believe that we need to have confidence in the future. I think we need to have confidence in our abilities, in our talent, in our reach, in our economy, in our culture, and all of those things. And if we have confidence in people, we have confidence in the voters, in the electorate, then I believe there's nothing that we cannot do. So I'm really proud to be here. I'm really proud to be with Nigel and with Richard and with my fellow candidates. I think it's going to be an extraordinary period of time. I'm really looking forward to it. As you can probably sense, I'm also slightly nervous about it. But I believe that the Brexit Party is the party that needs to win and win big. And I'm pleased to be part of that movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. You can see the breadth of people that we have attracted as we take on this incredible opportunity to change politics for good. And there really is something happened. You saw the numbers of people that are signing up for the Brexit Party. You know, the people are speaking, and it is very, very humbling. Change is in the air, and change for good. For our fourth candidate, I'm very pleased to welcome an award-winning charity worker who previously worked for British Airways and also for the NHS as a registered nurse. Please welcome to the stage, to the lectern, Christina Jordan.
Westminster, the mother of parliaments. We have a democracy that millions of people living in countries where the ballot box has no value can only dream about. The majority of Parliament were elected on manifestos pledging to honour the referendum result. But Remain supporting MPs have done everything they can to block Brexit. Hysterical MPs call Brexiteers Nazi appeasers and other derogatory names. They are dragging us at a cost of £100 million into the European elections and want us to pat them on the back, say well done, and vote their parties in. Not a chance. Brexit discussions and debates were held 3 years ago. This is now about democracy and the fundamental right to have our votes respected. I'm one of 17.4 million people who feel betrayed by Parliament. We have had to sit back and watch EU bureaucrats humiliate us. I'm standing for the Brexit Party because it wants to achieve Brexit in spirit and in practice. It wants the control of our money, laws and borders to be in our hands. The majority in Parliament may not want our country's independence, but ordinary people like me do. If we want our vote to count, if we believe in democracy, and if we want Brexit, we need the public to support and vote for the Brexit Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Again, heartfelt words from someone who never expected to be standing as a politician to protect democracy in the mother of all democracies. Our fifth and final candidate this morning, ladies and gentlemen, is without question, and I speak from personal enjoyment, the producer of the world's finest smoked salmon that he exports all over the world. I'm not on a commission basis. He exports all over the world. Please welcome to the lectern our fifth candidate today, standing for London, Lance Forman.
I wasn't expecting to be here today, but my red line was crossed when the Prime Minister invited the Marxist leader of an institutionally anti-Semitic party into 10 Downing Street for tea and biscuits to plot the future of our relationship with Europe because she couldn't figure it out for herself. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honoured to have been selected to represent the Brexit Party in the second truly meaningful vote. The first was on the 23rd of June 2016. And I have to thank the formidable Nigel Farage, we all do. Devoting 25 years of his life, he has done more than anyone in Britain to awaken the spirit of freedom and democracy so that his country, our country, can be independent and flourish. We are at the brink. One final heave. For the last 25 years, I have run our family smoked salmon business in London's East End. We are a small business, in existence for over 100 years, selling in the UK and overseas, as you said, Richard, within the EU and beyond. Prior to that, I was Special Advisor to the Secretary of State for Trade and Industry, Peter Lilly. I helped with some worthwhile causes, but I learnt that to make a real difference in politics, one had to have experience in the real world. I was struck at how the system seemed to attract political obsessives prepared to spend years working in and around Whitehall and turned off those with real experience. So I left to take the reins at our family business. To be honest, the transition from politics to oily fish was quite straightforward. But I was drawn back into politics at the start of the Brexit campaign. I felt it was essential that the public heard from people who run real businesses, small businesses, drowned out by the voices of the major multinationals or the CBI, often conflicted whilst they pocket EU funds. After all, small businesses employ more people in the UK than the largest corporations, so it was vital that our voice was heard. It wasn't an easy decision to make, as being vocal risks offending any customers who might take a different view. Many of my friends were Remainers, but interestingly now, they respect the vote and simply want to get on with it. In fact, many would be content to leave with no deal just to move on. In business, uncertainty is your worst enemy. So how has the government responded? They've delayed the uncertainty by another 6 months. It's crazy. The Barnier-May withdrawal treaty would be a disaster for Britain long-term, a national humiliation. And all those politicians who say, let's sign it and then we can weasel our way out of it later, I say, what a terrible first chapter that would be in our story as a newly independent country. We should be building a reputation for fair dealing, not for scheming with all the integrity of one of the nastier characters from the House of Cards. You see, ultimately, this is all about trust. Do we trust our politicians to be able to deliver? 3 years ago, when we were considering which way to vote, we knew what we were doing. Some of us were concerned about immigration, others about sovereignty or bureaucracy. In my case, I was alarmed about the direction the EU was heading with its dysfunctional currency, causing massive youth unemployment, resentment, and extremism across the continent. I fear the chaos it is provoking. Yet on the other hand, I see Brexit as the best opportunity our country has had in 40 years to reinvent itself as a world leader in this fast-paced technological world. We're nimble and aspirational. Whatever our motivation, we all had one thing in common. We all wanted to leave. Not leave a bit, not leave in 5 or 10 years, simply leave. Call us naive, but with promises and threats about this being a once-in-a-lifetime vote, we believed our decision would be honoured. Rather than respect the vote, the chattering classes, MPs, the civil service, the media, the heads of large corporations have done everything in their power to stifle the democratic will of the people, whilst patronising with phrases like, the facts have changed. Well, they're right, the facts have changed. Germany is heading into reverse gear, and France is now in its 23rd week of riots. You don't see that on the media. The facts have changed. Our economy has more inward investment from overseas than at any time since records began, and unemployment is the lowest since 1971, despite the naysayers predicting we would fall off a cliff. Yes, the facts have changed. This is no longer just about Brexit. This is now about democracy and fair play. The Brexit Party did not exist in June 2016, but it does exist now, and it is we who will ensure the successful delivery of Brexit that 17.4 million people voted for, and I'm proud to be part of it. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, those are our 5 additional candidates that we're announcing today. And before we finish, there's an opportunity for some questions and answers from members of the press. So who'd like to kick off? Any questions? Or have we wrapped it all up? Mr. Hope.
Have we wrapped it?
Chris Hope from the Daily Telegraph. Just 2 quick questions for Nigel, if that's okay, Richard.
I'm a humble man, Chris, it's fine.
Are you in talks with any senior Tory politicians about coming across to your slate of candidates? And will we ever see a manifesto? I mean, you have one single policy, which is Brexit. What does that mean in your eyes, Nigel, to be quite clear? And when will we see actual policies from this new party?
Well, firstly, in terms of, you talk about defectors, and I know that everybody in Westminster in the bubble's obsessed with existing politicians moving to other parties. I'm actually rather more interested in this broad range of people I've got here from all walks of life getting involved in politics than I am in defectors. And that's been our priority, is to find high caliber people from representing every community in this country, every background. And I genuinely believe we will put forward a list of 70 candidates with more experience, more ability, and more honesty, perhaps, than has been seen in this country for a very long time. As far as manifestos are concerned, we are fighting the 23rd of May on the issue of democracy. Are we a democratic country or not? Because right at the moment, it doesn't feel like it. And our friends around the world look at us and shake their heads. We're living through a very sad chapter in the story of our nation. We intend to deal with it. We're campaigning on trust. We're saying that actually career politicians think more about their own role within their parties than they do in honouring their pledges to the people. And we're also campaigning on competence, because what is clear is that Mrs May and the people around her have never done a deal in their lives, and they haven't got a clue what they're doing, and we want some better, higher calibre people in politics. And beyond that, of course, we're going to talk about the way in which we want to completely change British politics. Our existing institutions are no longer fit for purpose. The two-party system isn't fit for purpose. Many of those things we'll talk about, particularly keen to talk about how we invest in the future of our children and our young people. You know, why is it we're not training enough engineers, enough nurses, enough doctors? What's gone wrong? We will talk about all of those things after the 23rd of May. But right now, and one of the reasons why it's easy for people from across the political spectrum to come together, we are fighting and campaigning to make sure that we can be a free, independent, self-governing, democratic nation. It's the most important political battle that has been fought in this country for centuries.
Mr. Farage, Sam Coates from the Times. Isn't the truth that the fastest way to get the kind of Brexit that you want to see is to see a change of Conservative leader to Boris Johnson or to Dominic Raab, and then actually a vote for MEP candidates for the Brexit Party in the European elections won't make very much difference to anything? Shouldn't you be campaigning for a change of Prime Minister and a change of Tory leader, and do any of them have your blessing? And if I may, just one more, the news is dominated by what happened in Sri Lanka over the weekend. Do you think that there are any lessons for the UK from what we're seeing from those terrible attacks on the churches over there?
It's funny, you know, I've run for European elections before, being told you're wasting your time. It won't make any difference. I was told that back in 1999, and I was told that in 2004, and I was told that in 2009, and oh dear, am I really doing this for a 5th time? It looks like I am. And I was told all the way through, it makes no difference at all. Becoming an MEP is irrelevant, you can't change a darn thing. Well, I would say with respect that I think I might just have changed 1 or 2 things as an MEP. So I think that argument actually is void as an argument. I think the Conservative, I mean, what Conservative Party? Is it Ed Vaizey's Conservative Party or Andrew Bridgen's Conservative Party? I mean, there are 2 parties here, fixed together in a coalition, and the Tory party is massively divided at Westminster, though remarkably united now in the country. It is very much more now a Leave party. With Labour, it's the other way round. Labour are quite united in the Commons, but actually quite divided out there in the country. Look, it's up to the Labour Party or Conservative Party if they want to become a true party of democracy, a true party of integrity. I haven't seen, amongst the list of runners and riders to succeed Mrs May, anybody that didn't support that abject surrender, which is the withdrawal treaty. And if they're prepared to sign up to the worst deal in history, something that you could argue in some ways is even worse than the current form of EU membership, what on earth would give me confidence that there'd actually be a leader that would deliver a genuine Brexit? My view is the two-party system is bust. It doesn't work anymore. Something needs to come along and replace it, and I believe the Brexit Party is the catalyst for genuine, real change. And as far as the appalling atrocities in Sri Lanka, which, as you rightly say, is dominating all the news, I think the one lesson that we've learned from it, from what I can see, and perhaps James might have some more thoughts on this than me, but the one thought I've got in it is it does seem remarkable that when warnings are given about certain individuals, the security services in that country clearly failed to do their job, which is indeed very sad indeed. I would like to think that we are very much better in this country at dealing with these problems. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest fear is complacency in the UK, because we actually haven't had an attack for a while, so vigilance is paramount. I mean, this seems to be some sort of backlash from the appalling attacks in New Zealand, and this tit for tat will go on. So, you know, the first thing we should call for is calm, not to inflame the situation. Politics in this country is already toxic and highly divisive. Now is a time for unity across people from different backgrounds, not inflammatory rhetoric, because that's what allows terrorism to foster. And we must not be complacent in this country. We must be vigilant. And I would call upon all politicians across the political spectrum to calm down their rhetoric.
Thank you. Question towards the back there, yes.
Thank you. I'm Ben Glaze from the Daily Mirror. Nigel, you've talked about targeting Labour heartlands in the run-up to these elections. How do you think you'll be received there? And secondly, if you decide to have an eighth crack at becoming an MP, would you stand in a Labour-held seat?
As for the second question, look, I'm focusing completely on what's happening on May the 23rd, similar to the answer I gave to the Telegraph earlier. As far as Labour heartlands are concerned, well, this is really interesting. In the run-up to the 2015 general election, when I led UKIP, there was an obsession in the media that UKIP would take Tory votes, and this would put Miliband into government in coalition with the SNP. Actually, what happened is the UKIP vote in 2015 did far more damage to the Labour Party than it did to the Conservative Party. Cameron would not have won a majority without the UKIP vote. Again, it's this thinking that Euroscepticism is all somehow on the centre-right of politics, which it very clearly isn't. How will I be received in the Labour heartlands? Well, come with me and find out, because I shall be in the next few weeks in Sunderland and Doncaster and Barnsley and South Wales. And look, I will spend most of my time in Labour areas, and I challenge you, the Daily Mirror, to come with me, speak to traditional Labour voters, and I think you'll be surprised how disgusted they are. I mean, Tom Watson, coming out with this idea that only by calling for a second referendum can they beat the Brexit Party. I think Tom Watson's been spending too much time in Islington, because my experience of meeting Labour voters out around the country is they feel very strongly. I mean, the Labour Party, a party with roots deep in democracy, in broadening the franchise. That's what the party was all about when it first started. And for that Labour Party to basically be telling 5 million of its own followers, we don't like what you've done, you've got it wrong, you're stupid, you must do it again, I think it's going down pretty badly.
Claire, do you want to add to that, please?
I think it's important to recognise just how massive the shift has been in the last 3 years. Labour Party voters I know actually did vote Labour in the last election, went back to Labour because they believed that they were going to see through Brexit. That was what they believed. The sense of betrayal now, and the fact that the Labour Party can't even look its own voters in the eye without sneering at them for not having quite got the right result, is greeted by Labour voters in Labour heartlands with a sense of defiance. At first resignation and being fed up, and now a sense of, right, we're going to get organised. And I think, to speak to the broader theme of today, what Brexit has done has changed British politics forever. And I think what this European elections do is allow people to use their vote constructively to say the old political parties are hollowed out holograms with no principles who've cut themselves off from their roots. And the Labour Party deserves a metaphorical bloody nose for having abandoned its working class voters, not only abandoned them, but talking about them with such utter sneering kind of contempt. So I would say that I hope that it's not just seen as a crisis for the Tory party, and it is for them, but it's a crisis for the Labour Party. I'd actually have had more courage, I'd have more respect for the Labour Party if they'd chosen to go one way or another. Either have the confidence to come out as the kind of Remain heartland champions, or do what your leader, for many years he and I agreed on one thing and one thing only, Jerry Corbyn and I, which was on the EU, right? And then when it mattered, silence. So become either the party of Remain, which we know your MPs are, or become the party of Brexit, which is an anti-establishment revolt, but they haven't got the courage to do it, and they deserve, therefore, to lose the support of those voters that they've treated so poorly and shoddily.
Certainly. And to reinforce what Claire has just said, when we marched for 14 days from Sunderland to London, we went through some of those Labour heartlands, and time after time after time, we had Labour voters on the doorstep coming and supporting us and saying exactly what Claire has said, that they felt abandoned and ashamed and they wouldn't vote Labour again. This is significant, it's seismic. There is change in the air, ladies and gentlemen. I think there was one question just here.
Hello, this is Luke McGee from CNN. Nigel, you've said previously you wouldn't mind the idea of a second referendum because you think that Leave would storm it. Do you still think that's the case? And what was the follow-up to that? Oh yeah, do you still think that's the case? And due to the deadlock in Westminster, how likely do you think that is now?
What I said was that Leavers have to get themselves mentally prepared that there could be a second referendum. Rather than just saying it will never happen, we have to start preparing for a second referendum, which is exactly what the cross-party group Leave Means Leave has done. You saw the big rally they held in Westminster following the march down from Sunderland. So I think, at last, the Leave side is ready to fight that referendum. Do we want the referendum? No, we want the first one enacted. Quite simple, and it seems to me that the better the Brexit party does on May the 23rd, the less chance there is of the people of this great country being insulted by being made to vote again. I think we can stop a second referendum from happening.
Any more questions? One right at the back. Hi. Didn't quite catch that.
Jenny McKinnon from PA, sorry. Mr Farage, with your private education, your background in banking, what do you personally have in common with the working class, and particularly working class Labour voters?
Thank you. I was never in banking. Next question, please.
Private school then, Nigel.
I did go to a private school. You can't choose your parents, you can't choose your name. They called me Nigel, hey. We've got another female candidate. We've got a female candidate with an even more difficult name. We can't choose these things. I tell you what, there are things that unite people across the spectrums, across the classes, across the racial divide, and indeed across the religious divide as well. And it is a belief that nation-state democracy is the right way to live your life. That only in nation-state democracy can the will of the people actually be carried out. And it's something, I think, that has progressively made us a great country. It's a model that we've transferred to many parts of the world with decolonisation after 1945, and we're looked at, and we're called the mother of parliaments in this country. I mean, if this was happening, if an African country had had an election that had been overturned, there would be uproar. There'd be demand we send to the United Nations, and yet it's happening here. And I think most of our career class in Westminster think they can simply get away with this. Well, the Brexit Party is here to say, you won't get away with this. Our voice will be heard, and we will win this great historic battle.
Matthew at the end.
I'd just like to add one extra comment to that in terms of being a candidate, which is I really hope that people look at the breadth and diversity of the candidate list of the Brexit Party. In my experience, as I said when I spoke, I'm really proud to sit with such a broad range of interests from such a broad level of backgrounds. This is genuinely people who are interested and brought together to make a difference. This is not a political class. This is not professional politics. It's not all about Nigel. Because Brexit is not all about Nigel. Brexit is about real people who really care, who really feel betrayed and need to be trusted.
One more at the back before we finish.
Nigel, Martin Brown from the Daily Express. Have you spoken to President Trump about your latest political venture, and will you be meeting him when he comes here in June on a state visit? And if I may, there was a poll at the weekend which put you as runner-up to Boris Johnson as the next Tory leader. Are you flattered by that?
Well, I think that shows you what trouble the Tory party are in. I haven't been part of them for 27 years, so they must be confused. As far as President Trump's concerned, look, I haven't spoken to President Trump for, 5 weeks, something like that. So long before the Brexit Party was launched, I haven't spoken to him since. I've no doubt this American administration, which does believe in Brexit, will be looking at everything that's happening with very great interest. And as for June, he'll be here on a state visit. So the chances of this government or the establishment inviting me to anything official are hovering at around about 0, I would have thought. And after May the 23rd, they'll be even lower. Thank you.
I think that's all the questions, ladies and gentlemen. Before we finish, I just want to pick up on what Matthew said at the end. It was extraordinary going through the interview process of so many candidates, almost none of whom had ever had any political experience, who'd ever stood for elected office before. But the common theme that came through was that they'd had enough. That this country had been humiliated on the international stage, and that this country deserves so much better. And it's the current crop of politicians who have led us to this embarrassment, to this humiliation, and it's got to stop. And actually millions and millions of people across the country know that Brexit is an incredible opportunity. We need to embrace it, we need to aspire to it, we need to have confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to believe in Britain. Thank you very much. Have a good trip home.